3 points for the winner. If they are tied, then it will be decided in tie breaks. 2 points for the winner and 1 point for the loser. And here we go.
Here we go. And Jivanka's going to be very happy. Magnus opening with the Caro-Kann defense yet again.
I am extremely happy. My favorite opening on the board. And I'm a little bit worried because Magnus is pausing. There you go. He hasn't shaken my faith in the Caro-Kann. And here comes a light squared bishop. And this is such a trendy move right now. It's so tricky as well, and black normally handles this h4 push by actually copying, and once again the players are following the fashion, and now the light square bishop comes out and offers a trade, and this is very, very thematic. He pushes the e-pawn forward 1 square forward. This actually isn't the line that I recommend or play, but it is still very good.
Yeah.
Lots of action are going to be on the board. Pragmatic Prag. Going for the most critical lines.
Delaying this queen move. He does go for it, however, after a bit of a think. And we might well see the players race down that variation. Magnus doesn't need to rush by retreating his queen. He could also, for example, bring out his knight to a very nice square on f5. This is quite thematic as well. The dream home for black's knight. Or this isn't part of your repertoire, this exact.
It is now after this knight move by Prag, and you can see Magnus has gone for the most thematic approach, which is to develop the knight to the f5 square. This is the perfect square for such a knight in the Caro-Kann, and he offers a trade of queens. Again, so far so good. Magnus is doing all the right things, and he's breaking out now. He's challenging White's pawn center, and this as a Caro player gives me great joy, because when you do this, it's either good, as in really good, or it's going to be bad. And here I think it's perfect.
Necessarily one of them.
No, it's certainly not. And he does capture the pawn, and as David indicated, the bishop captures, and he's Prag is playing in aggressive style, directly attacking the queen, seizing space. So I find that this type of chess for white is quite risky, but also very ambitious at the same time. Why is it risky, people could be asking me? And that's primarily to do with the pawn structure and the control of the half-open lines. One
of my favourite games that I played in the Caro-Kann as black was when I castled on move 37 as black. So I castled queenside.
Naughty, David.
Yeah, I think my opponent, famous commentator Jon Ludvig Hammer, he nearly jumped out of his chair when I castled queenside. He forgot it was still legal. But yeah, so often here, I mean, that just kind of illustrates the fact that black's king doesn't necessarily need to make a decision as long as the centre is blocked with pawns.
Is a real mind-boggling one. I think David described it to me as one of the hardest mate in twos ever. It is white to play.
Meanwhile, Magnus just centralises the black rook. Also very sensible. We could see a puzzle-like finish to this game, potentially, if Prag can build up some attack. In the middle, almost. Yeah. Essentially, Magnus has committed. He's said, I'm not going to castle queenside. He's moved his rook across, and that black rook was attacked by White's bishop. White's bishop now does look like a pretty decent piece, covering some key squares, but essentially the status quo has been maintained. The centre is still closed, and we'll see the game enter a manoeuvring phase in the next few turns. The two greatest footballers playing right now for sure. This is a game between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura from Norway Chess. And meanwhile, a long think now from Magnus Carlsen. Prag has played a very mysterious move, the white rook coming across. It's lining up against the black queen, but it's not 100% clear what the plan is for Prag.
Onslaught, you really need your queen there. And wow,
after
I was
almost
not
6
expecting
minutes,
this move
Magnus makes this move.
I thought that Magnus would actually slow down the play and go backwards with the queen, just in anticipation of White's pawn move. But instead, he just accelerates everything. Wow.
From push pieces, advanced development. Once the pawn reaches the 8th rank, now heavily armed with a tank, my opponent's base is threatened, soldiers cut with shanks. This is the kind of stuff that's very much inside the space of hip-hop, but you're not always going to see it in the pop artists. So, you know, you gotta dig for it, but it's absolutely there.
Along with chess.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did that happen?
So America needs more, and young people need more physical and mental balance, right? So they work hard on jiu-jitsu, they work hard on the chessboard, the meditation centers them to improve both, and the results have been fantastic. There's a measured way where if one grabs the other, there's a response. if he knows it. If they do that response, there are 3 variant responses. And these things, it's just like chess. So for me, chess is jujitsu for the mind and jujitsu is chess for the body.
How has that impacted your students' lives outside the academy?
But when you got to rethink, restructure, and refocus to win again, that's where I see the champion, you know. And so I'm inspired by him in his consistent returns.
Jovanka and I were discussing the position. It feels like Magnus, he's managed to get over the worst, but he had to walk a bit of a tightrope to get here. And therefore, Magnus found a really important retreat. He stepped his knight back, guarding the diagonal, so now the queen stepping forward, for example, wouldn't cut across. Black could still safely castle the king. And as we saw in the game, that meant that Pragg had nothing better than rook takes pawn, and Magnus's king finally does find safety. He could have prolonged that game, maybe won on the clock, but yeah, Duda, it feels like things are going against him, and sometimes that's hard to turn that trend in chess.
Yeah, and there we see the knight spring forward to the centre, attacking the rook, and the rook duly moves to the 4th row. So Pragg is potentially getting ready to switch over to the right side if needed and attack the black king.
Throw the pieces, even if I want to punch the wall, you know, you have to suppress it. And that's why this tour's been so refreshing. We see the players showing their passion. All of these guys, they want to win more than anything else in the world. They don't care about anything other than that full point, the victory. You want to do this immediately, it's very risky, but the white rook would be able to swing across, and there might be some threats against the black king. But this was not allowed by Magnus. He offered this exchange of rooks, tying white down here, and yes, white's retreated. White's knight wants to aim into some juicier squares, potentially, but Magnus has finally activated his last piece, and I think that's a great sign. The evaluation bar agrees. Suddenly the position's turning in black's favour. This black rook maybe shouldn't have been allowed into the game, and after a trade, suddenly black is the one conquering the open file.
I agree with you there. I mean, Pragg is being very, like, one-track. He's playing with a one-track mind. He just wants to attack on the right side. Why should you?
Yeah, I think you called it with this queen move that Magnus has just chosen. The black queen suddenly is active, tying white down to some pieces over here, some pawns on the left side. If white now does get greedy and grab this pawn, it feels like there should be consequences. I don't see it immediately, but white's attack still needs time to build up. As long as there's no checkmate against the black king, then Magnus should be happy enough, and we're going to see this critical variation. This is the acid test of what Magnus here is doing. And, OK, he does take this pawn, so both queens have got greedy. Black's queen is far divorced, as you coined, from its king. So maybe that's one worrying sign for black. But white is only attacking with a queen right now. The bishop doesn't really do anything. White's bishop is hitting thin air. It has to be joined by the knight. We are going to see Pragg here go all in. It's as if he's thrown all of his chips into the centre. He's saying, I'm going for checkmate. I'm going for something against the black king. But the 2 black knights will act as defenders, and Magnus is calling the bluff. He's saying, no, I don't care. I'm just going to take all the pawns.
Wow.
Jovanka, I mean, the evaluation bar seems to say black is just almost winning now. Does that mean that Pragg has just got nothing? Maybe he's just hoping for tricks and then maybe trying to jump in with the white knight. But no, Pragg does indeed just shuffle his rook across. He moves his rook to d1, but what is that doing? Is he getting ready to sacrifice his rook, potentially?
Yeah, he has to be. I mean, otherwise it's just a very mysterious rook move. Ignore white's threats. So, okay.
Oh, and he doesn't find any of the top 3 moves, Magnus. Does that give Pragg a winning move? No, it's just level again, and it's back in the balance. It's all about whether Pragg can break through with a sacrifice. If he can't, then he'll have to look for other avenues. Maybe he'll now sidestep his rook to try and get in on the open c-file. It's incredibly impressive from the young Indian player. We thought just a few moves ago he was running out of steam, he was running out of ideas, but there he goes, he drops back the queen. Stockfish did confirm a few moments ago that this was one of white's best moves, lining up the queen with the black king, some tricks there potentially.
Yeah, and Magnus will now be considering what Pragg is threatening, and that's why he runs away with the king, because white was potentially threatening to advance the h-pawn, maybe come in to f6 with a piece sacrifice, and Magnus desperately trying to clarify the situation. He's keeping his king in safety, and at the same time, we see Pragg return the queen to where she came from, and so does the king. So will we see a draw by 3-fold repetition? If I were Pragg, I'm playing against Magnus Carlsen, so I would take the draw. I can't handle the tension. Well, we're going to see whether Magnus is feeling ambitious and wants to play on, or is he satisfied with a draw?
Magnus down at around 30 seconds, though. It would be so brave to take a risk now and not repeat the position. Black's king does look like it's a target, but Magnus is the one to reject the draw, reject the repetition. He offers a trade of rooks, stepping back Black's knight. Will he live to regret that decision, though? Attacking chances. Black is 1 pawn up, though, so if the queens disappear, those 2 black pawns will win the game. And Prag's giving up a piece. He's dropped his bishop in the heart of Black's position. This is a piece sacrifice because now after a rook trade, there's no more pin. Black can actually... Black can maybe grab this bishop. You have to calculate this very carefully. Can you just call Prag's bluff and take this white bishop off the board? Computer seems to think Black is winning.
Is Magnus reacting to this? Let's see Magnus as well.
Yeah, we need to watch both players here because the nerves will be jangling for both of them. He doesn't bite the bullet. He doesn't take White's bishop, and I think that was a good decision. If you had taken White's bishop, the White queen would have come to the top of the board, delivered a nasty check. But look at this Black retreat, blocking the White queen's entry points.
That knight retreat is such a good defensive move, and if that bishop moves, well, suddenly the e5 pawn falls and Magnus is completely winning, and the queen slides over 1 square. But Magnus, he's just forcing an endgame.
Yeah, he's closing the door. Every time White's queen tries to get in behind the Black pieces, Magnus shuts down either with his queen or with his knights. Black only has good defensive pieces left, and finally he does get greedy. He does seize the moment to take White's bishop. So right now, Black is a whole knight ahead. But will the Black king survive? How does he keep his king safe? He tries to run forward out into the open. He's going to keep advancing down the board. That is counterintuitive, but it looks safe enough for now. There's no checks with the White queen. White's knight can give a check, however. Maybe that's what we'll see Pragg do.
Yeah. And I'm actually predicting that that knight will retreat at the right time to h6, and this is why Pragg just moved his queen 1 square to the side. You know, she's threatening to give a check on h5, or a knight is going to jump in, and Magnus using the whole board just to defend his king. Look how the queen gave a check, and then she returned all the way back. Such classy move.
Yeah, really, really nice use of geometry there. He gives a check with his knight. Now Black's king has to march into the eye line of the White queen. This is with his, this was the only safe square, sorry. It's so exciting right now. But Pragg, the problem is you can give a discover check, but Black's queen will block, and you're just a knight down. No more compensation. You have to trade the queens, and that will spell the end.
Yeah.
And now David saying they're reunited.
Yeah, back together again.
Magnus to actually capture the knight, queen takes, and step back with the queen. And there we go. It is going to be game over. There's just really no way that the White queen can fight all alone against Black's army. I mean, just take a look at those 2 pawns there, the A and the B pawns. They're just going to promote.
The White king is on the wrong side of the board. You have to try this. There's simply nothing else for Pragg. But the queen and knight together for Black. They're just going to defend everything. They're going to hold everything. If Black can force a queen trade, that's game over. Those 2 black pawns will decide. That's what Magnus is trying to do. Planting his knight in the centre. Unless there's some miraculous perpetual check now from Praggnanandhaa, then he can essentially resign. But look at this. Black's king yet again hides on the side of the board, and no more checks.
The clock is ticking for Pragg, and he retreats the king. I mean, there's really nothing for it. He just has to push his pawns forward and hope for the best. And here comes Alice. She's wandering down the board.
Yeah, we saw Pragg shake his head. He knows that he's relying on a huge blunder now. Also, the clock times are against him. Magnus was down at a few seconds when he was defending for his life, but he's built up a huge time advantage almost at the 1-minute mark now. And again, just centralising his queen. He's trying to say, yes, the White queen can go and capture Black's pawns, but then the White pawns would fall. And yeah, any defensive idea here would involve weakening the White king even further. Pragg now under 5 seconds. He does try and grab a pawn, but it's not going to be enough. Black's queen and knight are going to team up now, maybe even deliver some checkmating threats.
He's got a safe place to hide the king. Queen and knight, perfect attacking duo. And well, he's following the principles, putting the queen in the centre. She's controlling as many squares as possible. This is such a good technique. And Pragg, just 10 seconds left on the clock. And his position is dire.
And in the background, we see Wesley So. He has just won the first game today against Jan Christoph Duda. That means hopes for Wesley So of winning the tour finals. If Magnus loses the match today, right now, that's not looking good for Wesley. Magnus about to win.
Yeah, and this is the danger when you don't attack correctly, and when the attack fizzles out, you might just be material down. And here we do see, as Jovanka advocated, Black's king is going to start marching forward. Why not? White is attacking with only a queen. The safest way to avoid the checks is to hide behind the white pawns, to hide behind your own pieces, potentially. And here Black can just munch on that white h-pawn very safely, and the checks will start to dry up.
Only one move that Magnus must not play. He must not step forward with his king to the g4 square. If he does that, he's going to lose. He's going to get checkmated. But Magnus, he's too clever. He just centralizes the queen. And, yep, that's it. We have a result. Magnus has won the first game.
With the black pieces taking the lead here, Magnus Carlsen.